Hey folks, welcome back to DIY guitar making. It has been a good little bit since I did a video, so I figured I'd do one and update you guys on where I'm at, and also we're gonna do some actual guitar making today. I've got a neck in the carving process, and so we're gonna do some of the finer details involved in getting that finited and fitted onto guitar number 116. Remember this one? This guitar, oh man, I can't remember how long ago I started this, but I've only done a couple of videos, like 2, maybe 3 videos on this, and they were in the very early stage. So sorry guys, you missed a lot, but you know, sometimes you just have to put the camera down and get a whole bunch of work done. I've got so much going on here in the shop that I've kind of neglected this for a little bit, but hey, I'm back. So just to fill you guys in, first of all, I've got a mustache now. That's different. And other than that, guitar number 116, like I said, guitar number 119 has also progressed quite a bit, and this is for Doug in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Tasmanian Blackwood, Western Red Cedar top, and this cool Rosette right here. I have also been working on batching out sets of redwood, which I have for sale. I don't have it up on the website yet, so just email me, guys, if you want some of these really awesome sets. Find the book match here of redwood. Yeah, and as always, I've got Wengi too as well. I just batched out a whole bunch of sets of this Wengi. All right, so Eric at ericschaeferguitars.com. Just email me there if you're interested in that, and I will get it up on the website at some point, guys. All right, enough rambling. Let's do some guitar making. Oh, but before we get started, if you like what I do and you get a little something out of the lessons that I teach, please go to ericschaeferguitars.com. There you can find the schedule of dates for my hands-on workshops and also my structured online courses on guitar making. All right, let's get to work. So like I said, I just mostly carved the neck, which we'll take a look at in just a moment here. But first, let me go over some of the tools that I like to use. You can see that as I went through the process here, I piled up a nice pile of tools. The spoke shave here, I often like to use on a mahogany neck. Now this is a bird's eye maple neck. Because of those bird's eyes, I really don't want to use edge tools, and I didn't use edge tools. But I wanted to share this with you guys anyway, because most of the time that's not going to be the case. I'm not going to be doing a bird's eye maple neck, and so I would use that. So really I want to use abrasive tools to avoid digging in and tearing out those bird's eyes. And here my favorite, whether the wood has figure or not, actually still my favorite tool and most used tool, is just a Shinto rasp. I like how it has kind of a broad, wide face. That wide face is just wide enough to not scoop in, essentially to maintain flat facets across the neck. So this does a really good job. Plus this kind of grid design that they have here is really good at shedding material rather than, you know, clogging up your files and having to constantly use a file cleaner to clean them out. So that's cool. Half round rasps, half round files. The round side seems to be just the right contour for getting into the cheeks and the heel. Now I've tried on a couple necks to get into this. This is supposed to be really great for neck carving, and I still, you know, use it a little bit every time I do a neck, but honestly I just don't love it. I haven't gotten into it. I don't know, I'll try it a little bit more, see if I like it, but essentially this is a round file with a compound radius. So it's almost like a rat tail file here at the very end, and then that radius broadens out towards this end, so you get a less curvature down at this end. And in theory that's great because you have a lot of different radii on the same file to shape sort of complex curves and things, but I don't know, I find that in actual practice it's a little bit annoying, and I end up going back to just a very simple half-round file for most of the work, if not all of the work. Oh, I use these marking gauges, which I have preset. I have 2 of them for all of my necks so that I can real quick grab these, mark the neck for my taper at the nut end and taper at the heel end, right? Because your neck thickness is going to taper from nut to heel. And so I got my 2 marks already done for me. I don't have to, you know, measure that out or anything. I do this with a lot of stuff, by the way, and we've talked about this before, but just buying a bunch of marking gauges and marking them with little flags here to tell you what they're for, and just kind of keeping them as a permanently dedicated tool is, in my opinion, even though it's a little bit expensive, it's a better way of keeping track of the various measurements on a given model of guitar, is just to have a whole bunch of marking gauges that you can grab and mark with rather than keeping everything in a notebook somewhere. Now, it's a good idea to also keep things in the notebook, and I do that as well, but just a helpful tip. Other than that, I mean, I'll just use a variety of sanding blocks for different purposes and a triangle file to get into some tight areas. And that's really it. It's pretty simple. And so here's the neck. I've got it 90% of the way done here. I really just have to finish this up with sandpaper held taut at the side, as you're going to see. I like to use 40 grit sandpaper. I have this special sandpaper that's Velcro backed that I use for my drum sander. It is super, the backing is super stiff and strong and also soft on your fingers, so it really works perfect for this, as you'll see in a moment. But I just wanted to point a couple things out. So there's still some shaping I have to do around the cheeks. That always kind of happens last at the very end. But then also another thing that I wait until the very end for, particularly with a Florentine Cutaway, is the very back edge here. If you look back here, you can see there's actually a lot of very rough material right at the very back edge on both sides that has to be shaped, and that basically I save for last because of that Florentine Cutaway. I'm going to have a sweep coming in to meet the fretboard right here, or I'm sorry, it's actually going to be on this side right here, and I want to actually leave a tad overhanging so that I can, once I fit it into the mortise and tenon, I can then take some sandpaper and basically just blend that edge right in with the sweep of the Florentine Cutaway, rather than at this stage over here kind of shaping it to where I expect that sweep to come in. Okay, so I've still got my depth marks. You can't really see it, so I'll put a little pencil in there. You see them? Just barely hanging on there. And what I don't want to do is now use my rough carving tools like the rasps and things and files to get down there. I want to use the safest tool possible, and that is just simply sandpaper, like we talked about. And by safe, I mean safe in the sense that I'm not going to throw things out of whack. This is only going to target the high spots, right? It's not going to fall into and dig into any persistent low spots here. So this will take us there. This is a flat sawn neck, by the way, which I talked about in an earlier video. When you're doing something with figure on the neck, you actually want to go flat sawn instead of quarter sawn. And now I know there's a whole strength issue with quarter sawn. That's why we want to go quarter sawn. But you can use flat sawn wood for a neck. It's maybe not technically optimal, but it's really the only way you're going to get these bird's eyes. Anyway, if you want to learn more about that, you can check out that earlier video. Off the cuff, I can't think of what the title was, but you know, if you look up flat sawn, look up my videos and look up flat sawn wood, and you'll find it for sure. And of course, the trick to using this sandpaper is not to let the influence of your thumbs or your hands come into play. Keep them way out to the side. And then I have a smaller piece of sandpaper. Where is it? Where did I put that? I have a smaller, as in more narrow piece, which I use simply to get up into the curve of the heel. And I can use it in a limited way up here, but I don't want to come up onto the cheeks. It's just too much. It's gonna not make them look good. I'm gonna use needle files in here later to finesse this area. But for the most part, this is great for the curve of the heel. And you can do little swirling motions that they work particularly well to get these inside corners, kind of like this. And then also nice, long, broad back and forth motions. Okay, back to the big piece. Now, all the while I'm looking at my two marks, and what I want to happen is I want both of these marks to disappear at the exact same moment as much as I can help that. That is going to guarantee that I've properly set the taper. If, for example, this one, which actually is looking pretty small, if this one disappears first, then I'm going to have to keep sanding, right, to eventually get this one down, and my taper is going to be slightly off. So as I'm noticing this, I'm going to compensate for it. So like I mentioned, this looks a little closer than this one. So I'm going to work this end a little bit more. To catch it up before returning to just getting the whole thing, right? Now I want to come into the cheeks a little bit with this needle file. This has a very gentle curve on it. That's important. You only want to use curved tools in here, and a gentle curve works better than a very drastic curve like you'd get on a rat tail file. Essentially, ideally, you would want the curve to closely match the curve that you're going for in this area. Now, I have not gotten down to my marks yet, and that's important. That's actually a common theme within neck carving, is that I'm never really trying to take any one particular thing to completion. I'm actually trying to manage several things, you know, the shape of the cheeks, the shape of the heel, my depth marks, the contours of the shaft. I'm trying to manage everything together and bring one area down a little bit, but then jump back to another area to catch that area up before any one area comes to completion. You can think of it like you're throwing a part of the neck out of equilibrium, but then catching everything else back up to that part before it gets too far ahead of you. It's a back and forth game. It requires a lot of just vigilant attention, honestly. It's real easy to get tunnel vision here. And speaking of tunnel vision, I just feel mesmerized by these bird's eyes. As I'm carving this, I'm just looking at those bird's eyes, and man, I am so glad I went with bird's eye maple, which thank you to you guys in the comments who really pushed me into using maple, kicking and screaming against my will. But I am definitely not regretting it. This is fun. This is cool. And I think the end result is definitely going to be worth the struggle of, you know, dealing with all that figure. And once again, a combination of nice straight forward strokes across several different facets, and simply these circular motions with the file That seems to blend everything in quite well, I find. All right, and this neck is basically there. A little bit more fine tuning to be done, but at this stage on the Florentine Cutaway particularly, it's a good idea to return to the neck fit. And I already did a little bit of neck fitting earlier before we started the camera, so you didn't see that. It's pretty much on how it was. So I checked it and it was where it needs to be. But I'm going to go ahead and check it again because I want two things to be right here. I want my fretboard to be in line with the center line, which will eventually meet the center of our string splay at the bridge. So I can check that with this center finding ruler right here, or I can simply check it with a straight edge, resting it against one side, measuring to the center, and then measuring to the center from the other side. Stupid thing. Sorry guys, this is my house arrest device right here. And if it falls off, the police will be here in minutes. No, I'm just kidding. This is actually remote for the camera. I've had people suggest that it was a house arrest device though, in the comments. So have fun with that one. Anyway, I want to make sure that this is on center. We're not skewing one way or the other. And then at the same time, this gap here, which looks pretty good right now, I can floss it in order to clean up any gaps that I might have in the joint. But it looks pretty tight now. I think it can get a little bit tighter. This surface right here on this particular model is not flat. It's actually a gentle curve coming into the joint. And so some of the gap that we see here, actually all of it, is because of that curve. And so if I loosen up the bolt that I just put in there, so it's like that, and then stick my paper in there and pull straight out a number of times, I'll do 15. And then do the same thing on the other side, because in this case, I want to do both sides evenly because I don't want this to tilt one way or the other because it's already on. If it wasn't, if it was a little bit off of center, I would work whichever side I need to work to get this to fall onto center. There's a little blind spot in the back here, especially on such a wide heel. So if I take this and just put sort of a triangular section of paper back there and just pull straight out just one time, because it's such a small area, I don't want to pull a whole bunch of times. I'll actually over round that. Just a single pull there kind of helps catch that up most of the time. Okay, and that looks a lot better, and I'll be able to tell even more when I tighten up this bolt because it'll pull it a little tighter. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I got it hand tight. Now I'll take my Allen wrench, see if I can find it. There it is. And just give it a snugging up. And that looks pretty good. Looks really good on this side. On this side, it looks like I've generated a tiny bit of a gap towards the top. So if I just use a smaller piece of paper, covers from about there to there, I can work this part. It's hard to say exactly why that started to gap out there. There's a number of reasons that could be the case, but the solution is simple. I'm just going to use a smaller piece of sandpaper to clean up that little bit. But honestly, it's close enough where I could just call it. But hey, when you know what to do and you know you're not going to make it any worse and you're not going to chase it and cause other problems, you might as well address it. All right, so I got to find a smaller piece of sandpaper. All right, so I did 10 strokes there, and that looks pretty good. Do a couple more. Okay, and then to keep it even, I'll do the same amount on the other side, but before I do that, just because the gap looks good now, and hey, maybe I might already be on my center line, so I might as well just quick check it, and then if I need to do the other side, I'll do the other side. So this ruler is very simple. You just have these posts here that you lock against the shape of your fretboard, and then you kind of wedge it down so that it gets tight, and once it's nice and tight, it'll pull that center line perfectly on center with the fretboard. So then you can see how your center line extrapolates out to your bridge location. And man, that could not be more dead on. So I am not going to sand the other side because the joint looks gap free, so no reason to address the other side. Everything is perfect as it is. This is where it gets kind of fun and a little tricky. You want to look at all the elements with this Florentine cutaway that are coming together in the same place. And as I'm finalizing the last little bit of this neck shape, I'm deciding on anything that I need to fudge just a little bit to get all of these elements to line up at once. And by all of these elements, I mean the sweep of the binding here coming into the binding of the fretboard. And that right now is perfect. There's really nothing I can do or should do to make that better. Now over here, getting the heel, this arc of the heel, which this is particular to my guitars because I do this type of heel and most other people do not. And so I want this arc of the heel to come right into the sweep of the cutaway. And to that end, I have actually glued a small scrap of ebony that I even bent a little bit on the bending iron that I have right here to get it to match the shape of the heel. I super glued that to the edge there because I was actually missing the target just a little bit. My heel cap was a little bit shy of that edge. You know, getting all these things to line up really is like a multi-stage thing, where at every stage of the build, when I'm getting into the, the neck fit section, I will stick the neck in and just see where I'm at and see if I need to fudge things over or, sand something here or add a little piece of ebony like I did here. Any way that I can think ahead and see how things are coming together affords me an opportunity to fudge things just slightly as it's coming together. All right, but looking at this heel cap again, I'm still just a little bit shy of where I want this to meet up with the edge of the Florentine cutaway. And actually a little piece of the fill that I put in there of ebony broke off at one point. So I think what I'm gonna do, instead of trying to put another strip of ebony in there, because I don't need much and I'm really close, is I'm going to take the neck out, put a piece of packaging tape under here, and then put the neck back in with the packaging tape underneath, and just take a little bit of super glue and try filling this area with just a little dab. Okay, and that packaging tape will prevent me obviously from sticking my neck to the guitar, which of course eventually we want to do, but not in that way and not right now. Okay, just cutting that little piece of packaging tape away so we can put the neck back in. Essentially, I'm using the guitar body itself as like a dam to hold back the glue so that I get a nice clean edge there. We'll see. This is all experimental, guys. We'll see what happens. Wish me luck. Okay. So this is kind of like a medium viscosity, or I don't know if you would technically call this medium, but it's a number 20 on the viscosity scale. 10 is water thin. So this is pretty thin, but not nearly as thin as 10. All right, looks like I need a new whip tip. First, let's test this on something else. There we go, it comes out. Get that whip tip on there. And then of course this fill here is going to have kind of a lumpy shape, but if I take it back to the neck carving fixture and use some loose sandpaper held taut at the sides like we were doing before, I can shape this against the rest of the heel and it will take on that curvature. So I'm just kind of painting this on there right now. Okay. I'm almost tempted here to not use the accelerator because I don't want to just skin over the outside surface, which with such a heavy fill, if I do that, it'll kind of never cure fully on the inside. I mean, it'll just take a really long time. And they'll probably then end up sanding it back and exposing the gooey center on the inside. So I don't want to do that, but at the same time, I don't want to stand here forever and wait for this to more naturally cure. Now, if there's a middle ground where if you at least wait a little bit before you accelerate it, it should be okay. So I think that's what I'm going to do. We'll just hang out here for a moment. Okay, peel that tape off. All right, that worked well. You can see how that fill is perfectly in line with the rest of the joint. And so that worked well as a dam. So next I'll go ahead and I'll sand that back, and then I'll also mark how much of this heel cap overextends. Obviously this heel cap is too big right now, too tall. So at this part of the game here, you can go ahead and mark it with a pencil right against the body. And I'm just going to sand that back, you know, take it over to, actually I'll use the manual disc sander that I have and knock that back. So it's really close, but then to get the final shape of it, I'll do that after it's glued in here so that I can take the curvature of the back and just sand that right into the last little bit of the heel there. Because that's how I like this to go. I don't like having that awkward little step down to the heel that you see on a lot of manufactured guitars. I want the back to just seamlessly, that surface of the back to seamlessly come onto the heel cap. Okay, so that is a lot closer. Obviously there's still a little bit of a lip there, and this meets up again a lot closer. It doesn't bother me that either of those two things are still slightly off. There's still a slight lip here because that's kind of where I want to be. Very, very, very close. And then I'm ready to glue this, and after the fact, that last little bit, I can basically take a block and follow this sweep and just blend it in that way. Likewise with the excess heel cap material that sits up high, we can then sand that flush. Cool, so let's go ahead and clean up the surface here. Sand this to 220 grit right here as a mating surface. And I mean, that's basically it. There's one other thing I like to check, but we'll do this after I sand those surfaces. I'm going to take a Allen key and just see if I can access the truss rod. If I can't quite access the truss rod, well, then I'm going to have to take a file, real simple, and go in through here and just file upward just a little bit to create a little bit of room for that truss rod. Okay, room for that Allen key, I mean. All right, let's do it. All right, and I got 10 minutes before I need to be running out the door here, so let's see what we can do, because it would be awesome to actually have this glued up when I come back in tomorrow. A little bit of a low spot right here, so I'm going to take a soft block with the same 220 grit and just press into that area, which will clean up the glue that is hiding in that low spot. And there it is, it's gone. Would have taken forever to do it with just the flat block, and they would have sanded too much off. So that's a little just something to keep in mind, you guys. I've seen so many people, and I used to do it so much myself, sand too much and sand through stuff because I'm only flat sanding. If you integrate the soft block as well, everything just falls into place. All right, let's quick check that truss rod. Okay, can't quite access, so I'm just going to file a little bit against the transverse bar and the fretboard graft. Got everything I need. Not a bad thing to do. If you take some super glue and just spread it on the back of the tenon very thinly, and the idea is just to seal the grain to prevent expansion, which can mess up your joint. Now, of course, you should also have a gap between the back of the tenon and the mortise for that same purpose. And then a little bit of this glue I'll even put along the edges of the brass insert. Should definitely not be doing this over top of the guitar. That's stupid, but that's what I did. And so that's good. Here's my bolt and my Belleville washer. Just a dot of 3-in-1 oil on there before we put it in for good. Now we're going to spread the glue just on the fretboard tongue. This is not going in the joint, of course, because this is a standard bolt-on mortise and tenon. And I don't want to massively overdo the glue here because it's going to be on the outside, of course, and I want to be able to clean it up cleanly.
If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaeferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.